Good afternoon, everyone. So let's talk today about something that keeps a lot of us, I mean like in pharma industry, up at night. And that's the kind of uncomfortable truth about pharma analytics. It's messy, it's complex, and it's way more expensive. So we in pharma are sitting in the intersection of science, of business, of technology, of data. So where the science meets the clinical trial, where regulatory requirements meets data innovation, and the mindset, oh, we've done it this way, versus we need that result really fast. So then in this, already very crowded space, the open source works in. So R, Python, Shiny, and offers, suddenly these are not just alternative tools. That's how big, small, mid-sized pharma companies are designing studies, are doing their analytics. They communicate results not only with the regulatory bodies, however, also internally and externally with their stakeholders. So at the same time, in this space, there is also another guest that is just knocking out on our door, which is multiomics and other data sources that are moving from research, preclinical, experimental rooms into the clinical decision. So as I like to say, in pharma we certainly love complexity and a lot of places where we can take the data from and then make our lives certainly not easy. So the tools are there, the science is there, the desire is there. So the question I want to answer today, hopefully, is it really working? And not in a press release, in the lab environment within the company, but just in practice. So during today's 20-25 minutes, we'll see, I want to go through behind the scene of the analytics. And by pharma analytics, I mean certainly more the clinical trial space, so all the phase 1 to 4, but not also some preclinicals, and how the reality is there. So we'll start with clinical statistical analytics field, move forward to add to it bioinformatics and omics in general, and finish up with change in practice. And it is happening at this moment and will be certainly in the next couple of years. So where the teams are winning, where they are stuck, when there are chances, opportunities, also for us with our background in how actually move from enormous potential to make an impact on a daily basis. So let's start with a story. I came to Krakow just straight from a big European event in Hamburg. And let me tell you a couple of situations lately with a head of biostatistics, biometrics, data science, you name it, on the major pharma company. And they went through, we know open source. We certainly know it's better, our team loves that, the new generation of our team members doesn't necessarily love to SAS, or it's all Python that they are up to. They know all about that, they are fluent in Git, in version controls, in putting Docker, AWS, whatever, you name it. But it takes months actually to make it work with our internal pipelines, with our workflows, and not to mention that the IT or QA won't sign it off. Before we prove a long list of requirements, because everything there need to be compliant. So for me, it sounds familiar. Those conversations have been in the room and certainly will. However, the open source tools have entered the pharma space, a couple of years ago, and they did a tremendous change, and they're still doing and solving many technical problems. I just put on that slide just a tiny percentage of packages that are out there, are packages. like SDTM, card, ggplot, of course, that's the more general one, but ggsummary, and also Pharmaverse that covers the R packages where you can do your end-to-end clinical trial data analytics, so starting from the raw data through the SDTM, ADAMS, and then TFL, so table figures, listings, and then submission to the regulatory. So it's not just good, they're often better than alternatives, they are there. So there is alternative to proprietary SAS and the macros. You can go with R, even Python is gaining some more attention, and of course Shiny with the interactive visualization that can make your stakeholders, your business actually exploring the data, interacting, and being in the exploratory space closer to us programmers with the data and data analytics. But in that space, just use the tool is never enough, because the compliance on the line, and that's the first thing that we have to also think about. So there are a couple of requirements. The list is not finished, but certainly you need to remember, regardless what kind of open source you're using, about reproducible code. That's one of the main requirements, because it doesn't have to. It necessarily has to be now across the team, but also 5 years later or 10 years later. When the clinical trials can last, and you have to come back, you have to show it to your regulatory or other teams and come back to it, rerun it, or certainly show the evidence, yes, this line of the code do that, and in the regulatory environment also does the same. Version control, of course, because we are traceability, auditability is like number one. Standards, we do have CIDISC standards in the clinical space that kind of solve the problem. However, each of the companies also have their own addition to it with the definition variables, but the main one, like SDTM ADAM, is out there. Validation and quality checks, impact checks, you cannot miss it. Audit trails, everything is signed and need to be regulatory accepted. And cross-department consistency, because you do have statisticians, then you have statistical programmers are data scientists, data analytics, then you have commercial, medical writers, so a lot of different people is involved along the way. So they also have to, if they need to use that, that's where the consistency comes in. So is it actually working right now? Yes, it is. It's more than just implement the tool. It's more like a business and building the solutions. So first of all, I would say writing a good code. I mean, it's important, but it's the entire infrastructure that goes within. So yes, pharma companies use Dockers, containers, so they can run the analytics anywhere. Package management, of course, needed, and validated package, so dependencies don't break. Version is always known, and anyone on the planet can actually rerun it. Git repository with proper branching strategies, helping with the audit trail as well, and the traceability, and the documentation and user management, role access, because you have, for example, blinded and unblinded data. This is like enterprise solution. So as you can see, there are many layers in those architecture, and it's way more complicated than we might think. We do have foundations, not very far from what we know in standard SDLC and other spaces. Version control, more data as a standard, data pipeline, data engineering. That's out there because, especially now when we move to advanced tooling and some new, let's say, AI spaces, this data and harmonization, integration in this variety of format is also needed. Infrastructure, yes, Docker, AWS, Cloud, HPC, Kubernetes, everything you have. and then analysis where the magic happens as some things. So our Python validated packages or whatever is out there, including the open source. And last but not least, communication with your teams, internal, external, regulatory bodies. Is it static, like with submission, or is it interactive, where you can actually move from kind of put a little bit of the exploratory vibes into the explanatory situation, making the clinical decision based on that. However, as you can see, all that is within a compliance, so in our favorite bubble. So transparency is embedded, like on the first place. It's not add-on, it's by design needed. And with proprietary software, it's usually, it is a black box. You trust the provider, the vendor, did the job, tested it. When we come to open source or Python or whatever, every line is visible, every calculation as well is auditable, and it's not only if the reviewer or regulatory asks you how did you calculate this and this variable and that, but also your team member. So that's the kind of also ways of working that are changing, so that we are not doing the same and reinventing the wheel, even up department next to department, so 17 the same packages over there. So one validated package, library, templates, governance framework, and then adopted along the organization and use. So the barrier here is not the technical, the regulatory as well, not. We certainly can answer question, can R do this? Can Python do this? Can you do submission in R successfully? Yes, we can. It's working. There already have been several submissions done solely in R, not in SAS, but R. It has been a big thing in the industry when the first one came out, moving from the proprietary and solely in the open source. There are some other technical barriers with sharing the code, but most importantly, sharing the data. Because as you can imagine, that's the patient data, like the most secure data that you have to protect. So how you actually give the FDA or EMEA access to it, that's also something to bear in mind. However, this kind of all the barriers that are there are shrinking, the technology is there, the open source is there. So now the question is if the organization itself, the teams, can keep up and move fast enough to actually bring the answers, bring the decisions closer, because we all know like the cycle of the clinical trial certainly won't be shortened just like that. It's more about when the decision is faster, so that we can minimize the risk and actually make decision go no go way quicker. So in our favorite bubble, let's add something where I would say the innovation comes in and new things that are breaking down. And that's the, let's say, multi-omics data, real-world data. It's moving from the research curiosity, from the preclinical, from the exploratory, into actual clinical decision making. So we are seeing it mostly in oncology, rare diseases, but not limited to it. The data exists, certainly. The technology works. We have the team skilled in those analytics. So we keep raising the bar. But there's also a problem out there with bridging this gap. It's you have the bioinformatician or analyst that speaks the biology, expression, proteins, variant calling, etc. And then you've got data scientist or a statistical programmer, depends on the company, who speaks more in the statistics. So, models, predictions, accuracy, validation, and now they are supposed to collaborate, like now. So how do we integrate that two worlds that are not that far away from each other into the clinical decision? So let me give you like a real scenario. an example of the clinical studies. Clinical trial, cancer drug, so traditional endpoints collected, of course, along the way with response, PFS, adverse events, all the safety endpoints, efficacy, whatever you need for the submission process and the regulatory agencies, as well as what you have already defined on your study and protocol design. And then you also collect RNA-seq from tumor biopsies. Why? I mean, because you can find some biomarkers, maybe you can stratify patients then based on who respond better. Maybe you can look about the mechanism of the actions. So the bioinformatician run the analysis, do differential expression, pathways, put some gene signatures, and they find something interesting. I should be happy. We certainly are. However, then comes also a question that you need to validate in the clinical data set. So, okay, bioinformatics pipeline is in Python. Maybe the clinical data sets are, the clinical trial data. If in R, you're lucky. If SAS, not so. So then you have different formats, different assumptions, the variable definition, and nobody documented the pre-processing steps or the assumptions or the hypothesis. So if it's R, if it's Python, if it's SAS, it's at least your problem. So that's assuming as well that these people talk to each other and they are not in two different departments, in two different sites. So that's where also the gap kind of comes. And yes, there are teams that are succeeding in that. They went a long journey and certainly they are still learning. However, it is possible to solve at some point the integrated challenge, but it's not as easy as doing it overnight, especially when to all these three circles, you will add much more data sources and you also want to expand and map it entirely through and take insights from it and make it richer. So when it comes to the pillars, I call it a solution framework, and certainly it's not the only framework that you can go with. However, starting with standards. By standards, I mean data formats, at least. And kind of like APIs, documentation, so your foundation, so that you can actually rely on it. And common data exchange formats, documented processing pipelines. I know it's painful, but it pays off later, trust me. Been and done there. So shared metadata standards, you can have also when you want to use the multi-omics or any omics within the let's say analysis within the clinical you can do with R and Python. There are the MAE format, or there is bioobjects that looks like the JSON file, so that it's kind of like you can then match to the clinical data sets in a standard ways. The second pillar is workflows. The workflows integrated from day one. So combined analysis. That means that you don't just add omics at the end because someone found out like, oh, we have this data, let's just use it. No, it's better to kind of put the bioinformatics, put the engineering from the very start, so they are kind of already designed, taking into account the clinical and molecular data. They are collected together, they are analyzed together, they are processed together and interpreted together. So there is a close collaboration from different team members. So that you can also this require not only collaboration on the analytics part, but also on the design and the protocol design stage, which is early on in the entire clinical trial process. So not only data analytics, but also design, and then interpretation, of course, on the other side. And the third pillar for me is cross trainings. I mean, like shared language. So overlapping expertise as well as communication. The number of misunderstandings, missed errors, I mean, we are all humans, but this is where also comes additional value when the bioinformatician also know a little bit of the statistical principles and vice versa. Data scientists knew basic biology. It doesn't mean like everyone has to know everything. Yes, it's impossible. I get that. It's more about finding these common grounds and overlap in communication to make it efficient and not just another silos. We have them too many already. So if we silos the communication, at least talk to each other, and then we can certainly look for the successful integration. However, disclaimer, what the success means, that's also a matter of question, because some might think, yes, that's the end of the story. No, it's not. It doesn't mean like we have to merge two data sets and the integration is out there. No, that's not what I mean. Here it's more about how to put these two words, or certainly not distinguished words, together working so that we can have the information and enrich our insight and decision making in this long but very important clinical trial pipeline. So one more thing that also keeps us at night is we do have new assays, new data, new methods, and actually if you're trying to figure out how to integrate your RNA-seq from, let's say, 5 years ago, you're already behind. So now it's time to catch up, or at least look further as well and look at the other data sources. So the pace is enormous, and the companies also struggles with that. However, they're doing their best to keep up, to implement tools, not today, but also looking further into the future, because flexible infrastructure at least gave you a leverage that you can test the new tooling, whatever it is. I'm not saying about the AI, but also regulation changes, also the new data sources, the new packages, the new methods out there. So if your infrastructure is your bottleneck, then you add to this list another problem to solve, and it's not that easy to do so. So creating these collaboration frameworks with the flexibility, however, also securing the compliance. So we are not fighting next to each other, but we are hands to hands, and that's what open source also in pharma is. Like, we are all in a race for new drugs and products. We are not in a race over toolings. We all use more or less the same, with some adjustment to our workflows or therapeutic areas. So let's race on solutions, not necessarily on the tools that we are using. Okay, the barriers, and I know that we have a little bit, but that's important because that's usually the elephant in the room, and it's the hard part. You can think like technical challenges are the main ones, and I would love to be there. That would be easier probably to solve, not to add regulatory and the cultural. However, there is this question. We've done it for 20 years. Why change now? Why we need that? It worked. We had past submissions. So why? So yes, the fear here is not entirely irrational, because pharma itself is a risk-averse industry for good reasons. We do make products that interact with patient, with body, so the regulatory scrutiny is intense, and the cost of the errors is not only measured in money but also in life. So we are looking at the safety, compliance, billions in development costs, but years of working on the line. So it's not just tech startup. Here the stakes are really high and they are real. So when I'm saying about the change usually and talking with the teams and with the executives, I say it in a way, yes, we need to change how we work. And at the same time, I'm not naive. I know this takes, and but staying is also risky. So the competition is moving. The competition is also moving. The science advancing. In the same time, the patients are waiting here. So I would say I will be quickly going and asking why maybe we can't move fast and break things. I mean, no, we can't. That's the thing. We have the whole environment, the all things that we need to think about safety, about efficacy, about the patients itself. So this cannot be just overnight story, and we need to be careful in how we plan and change each other. So just the change framework, I would say where to start, because it is possible to have sustained challenge and pilot project that just go further. They start with this sandbox environment, so you can play. You don't need to think about any regulatory pressure, or you can test the toolings. You move to pilot projects where you actually also test your hypothesis, measure it, learn from it. So it's not just then put on the shelf after 6 months and no one even remember about that. Move to scaled implementations with the ones that you think and bring value, not only business, scientific value, technological value, or certain metrics, and plan those metrics before. So that you can then verify and then continuously improve, because absolutely you need that, not just training, learning. There will be failure, of course, like 9 failures, 1 win, but that's where the knowledge comes in. And finishing, like, what's the hardest part? I would say letting go, because we know like the legacy is slow. It's more expensive, it's less transparent. We still stick with it because it's familiar, it's safe, it was successful in the past. And yes, change is uncomfortable, but staying in it's stagnation, and we all know we need to progress to be successful. So the good news is so many of teams that actually made the loop, and they don't want to come back because they already see the new ways of working, the new tooling, the open source, the idea, the mindset, the collaboration that is embedded within, not just about bringing the technology that serves for you, and it's more transparency, faster analysis, better collaboration, less repeated errors, and less manual work. So I know I probably should be finishing, right? Okay, but I do have like what's matter in the industry transformation. It's not a trend, I know, it sounds fancy, but it's actually needed in reality. So faster, and by faster I mean speed, not rushing, not cutting corners. That's not the case. It's just not wasting time, things that reinventing the wheel, time leaps, like manual things, errors, that's the thing, like not cutting corners. Then transparency, so openness, every calculation, assumption, document, line of code, it is not weakness, it's strength, you are showing that. And the collaboration, that's really, really important within teams member companies as well, in this competitive market. So we have them. So finishing, the tools exist, open source, proprietary, depends. The science is proven, the team members are there, the skill set, experience, knowledge is there. So I also look at some of you. And so I leave you with a question. What's your next move, and challenge you today not to just think about these ideas and the story, but actually action, start doing it. Look at this open source package, test them, build your sandbox as well, start a pilot. You can engage in the community. Our community and the Pharma community is very open and welcome anyone who wants to put their code, their mind into it. You can look at the GitHub and certainly start engaging. So yeah, the future is being written right now, and I encourage you to join me and other companies. And I'm finishing 1 minute after. So thank you so much for today, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.